This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find more of our work at ObsessiveViewer.com. You can follow us on Letterboxd at Letterboxd.com/ObsessiveViewer, Obsessive Tiny, and at, I am Mike White, respectively. You can also like us on Facebook and join the Facebook group at Facebook.com/TheObsessiveViewer. And Tiny, how's it going?
It's going. I am back.
Nice.
It's been like a month since I've been on the podcast.
Your absence has been felt.
I have been sick, guys.
Yes.
I've been to the ER twice in the last 4 months.
The ER is human.
Yes, I do remember that. So,
do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, and you showed me a picture.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I had violent food poisoning.
Yep.
Earlier this week. It's just been crazy, but I feel way better now.
Nice.
So,
that's
yeah.
great.
Yep.
You're wearing a pink shirt. So.
I am wearing a pink shirt.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I'm wearing a brown shirt. So anyway.
Great visuals.
Yes.
So descriptive.
So we've got a lot of stuff to go through today.
Yep.
But glad you're back. Glad you're feeling better. Mm-hmm. One of the things I want to bring up, kind of on the same thing, we have some Patreon reviews that are due.
Yes.
We owe Robert in Utah, we owe him a review of The Devil's Backbone. And Mandy, because I think the plan is that me and Mike might be reviewing Spider-Man on Sunday. So I think, and I actually went to Redbox and got Mandy on DVD, so I think we might do the Mandy review there. But we owe Robert The Devil's Backbone, and we owe Tony Heartbeeps. So I'm thinking that you and I should do like a double review episode in the coming weeks of The Devil's Backbone and Heartbeeps.
Okay.
So yeah. But speaking of Patreon, if you want us to drag our feet and owe you for several reviews, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. You can support us. I've actually revamped the promotion or the Patreon tier. So it doesn't have anything, but if you're a Patreon and you want us to review something, just message me and we'll facilitate it. But speaking of which, we do have a new Patreon supporter, Tiny.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it's Ben. Should we say his last name?
No.
Okay.
He works for the CIA, so I don't know.
Oh, does he really?
No.
Oh, okay.
I hope not. I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah, we'll use a code name. Ben JCPenney.
God damn it. Oh, you're ridiculous.
And there goes our Patreon subscription. No, thank you so much, Ben, for supporting us. He actually made a substantial donation, to which he is going to be a guest on the podcast, sometime next month. We're going to do an Oscar nominations episode, and he's going to be on it. So very much looking forward to meeting him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it'll be interesting because that'll be the first time in the podcast's history, sort of, that we have a guest that I've never met in person, or I know him through the Facebook group and
right.
Facebook and everything.
The internet brings people together.
It does. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So once again, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and support us if you want. And thank you, Ben JCPenney, for supporting us.
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Ben. And then I've got some more housekeeping stuff to go through. Do you mind indulging me for a second, Tiny? Okay, so Letterboxd, there's a subreddit called Letterboxd Official that is apparently sanctioned by Letterboxd, the people at Letterboxd. It is a really cool community, it's a good extension of the Letterboxd community, and they are doing a weekly film club.
Okay.
That I'm really excited about. I made a list on Letterboxd. I'm trying to, be proactive on it and everything. If you go to Reddit and you go to Letterboxd official, it's the sticky post at the top. Basically, what they will do is every week the subreddit votes on a specific theme. So the first week's theme was Yorgos Lanthimos, the filmmaker. He did Dogtooth, the Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I talked about in like January on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Also The Lobster, and he's got The Favorite out now. So the group voted on that, picked Dogtooth. Basically, the subreddit watched Dogtooth and discussed it on the subreddit. Week 2 was unconventional Christmas movies, or Christmas movies that alternative Christmas movies.
Okay.
And the winner of that was Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so that's going to be this weekend is when the conversation happens, like the discussion. But I'm excited because I'm making a list and everything, and I'm checking it twice, and I'm putting the movies in there and everything, and I'm putting like links, like putting my reviews and everything.
Nice.
Very much looking forward to it.
That's cool.
Yeah. The current one, by the time you listen to this, the voting will be done, but the current one is, the theme for next week is Alfonso Cuarón.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, the subreddit will either be talking about Y Tu Mama También, Children of Men, or Gravity.
Children of Men, hands down.
Yeah. Well, I voted for Y Tu Mama También because that's the only one I haven't seen.
Okay, nice. I haven't seen it either.
Nice. So yeah, so that's just a cool like extension of that. I'm not gonna talk about the other thing on there because I'll just save that for the year in review episode.
Okay.
I'm also getting back into my top 100 project. I'm excited about that.
Cool.
That's about it.
Nice.
The top 100 project. Was very excited, and I felt kind of not guilty, but I felt like I should have like messaged you earlier because I went and saw Schindler's List in the theater.
Right.
Yeah, and I was going to because I had said like, hey, yeah, we should go if you want to, and you said that you might be able to go Saturday, and like I was so on the fence about if I wanted to go on Saturday that like it was like half an hour before the showtime where I was like, I need to shit or get off the pot. And, like, I need to either cancel this ticket and get one for Sunday, or I just need to go. And, like, I just finally, like, I went, and, like, I was like, I should have messaged Tiny, but I didn't get a chance to. And, like, by the time I thought about it, you wouldn't have been able to make it there.
Yeah.
So
well, with all my medical crap, I was like, I just don't even want to be in public more than I have to.
Yeah.
So.
And, like, I felt okay with that and everything. Like that was my rationale, too. And then, like, the next day, you're posting about, I saw Widows in the theater. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, man.
I know. I did go see Widows, but.
Nice.
Yeah.
But speaking of theater viewings, by the way, Schindler's List in the theater was the first time I've seen it in decades.
Really?
In a decade, probably. And I think the last time I saw it was, like, on a laptop.
Really?
Like seeing it on the big screen, being so immersed in it, it's like that is not only is it one of the most powerful movies I've ever seen, it's one of the most important movies there is.
It really is, yeah.
Just incredible.
Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah. But speaking of theater viewings, Tiny.
Yeah.
So as our listeners will know, you and Kirsten are in a very highly publicized,
heated,
vicious race.
Yes.
For I guess the title of Matt Hurt's movie theater companion.
Yes.
And I checked the stats. As of today, as of this recording on Thursday, December 13th, 2018, at 9:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you are at 75 movies seen with me.
Yeah.
Kirsten is at 74.
Oh.
And she and I have plans to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse tomorrow.
Oh boy.
So you're gonna need to pick it up.
Yeah.
We're gonna need to see something.
Need to hunker down here.
Yes. Yeah. How do you feel right now?
I'm a little embarrassed.
Okay.
A little hurt. Not really.
Oh, yeah.
Not hurt. But no, I've just
hurt.
been, you are. You have no choice but to be hurt.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I have just, my theater viewings have just fallen off so much. Yeah.
Excuses.
I know. I wish I had a good one. I don't.
Yeah. But I tweeted that, and I got a text message from Kirsten, and so later in the day, she said, oh, where is it? Okay, she said, hey, I got cast in Almost Maine, a play, so you can just plan on not seeing me again until March.
Oh boy.
That will give Tiny a chance to widen the movie gap. So I'll just say, Kirsten has been cast in a play. So if you are in Indianapolis, Mud Creek Players is putting on a production of Almost Maine. That runs February 15th to March 2nd. You can find that at mudcreekplayers.org. Yeah. Oh, wow. There's a lot of showings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 performances. So yeah, go check that out at mudcreekplayers.org. I'll be at one of those. I'm not sure which one yet. So yeah. Oh, wow. Anyway, so Kirsten and I may not be able to see as many movies. We're going to see Spider-Man, but I don't know what that's going to do to her appearances on the podcast and our TV swap project and everything.
Gotcha.
Have you been listening to the podcast? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not.
Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, I did tell you about it, but basically she and I will see a movie, come back here and watch like an episode of like I'm showing her one of my favorite shows. She's showing me one of her favorite shows.
Okay.
So she's introducing me to Flashpoint, a Canadian SWAT drama.
Oh boy.
And I'm introducing her to Lost.
Okay.
So
I was wondering why your Blu-rays were out.
Yes. Oh yeah. So it is, thank you for listening to the podcast, by the way.
I know.
But what I'm calling it is the TV swap project with the subtitle, suggested by, Robert in Utah on the Facebook group. But it's a TV swap project, Lost Point.
So, Lost Point.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so that's the, Kirsten has put a major wrench in the production of the podcast. So
yeah.
But no, I'm very excited to see her perform again.
Cool.
Yep. So the last piece of housekeeping, this is all very, like, a lot of stuff because we haven't really talked that much.
I know.
lately.
Yeah.
So, I was listening to the podcast, cause I don't know, in preparation for the year in review episode, I'm going back and listening to most of the episodes we've had this year. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed in episode 245, our Tron Legacy review, you had considered getting A-list.
Yes.
And if, going through the record, you said that you may drop Audible to get A-list.
Yeah.
Have you given that any more thought?
I haven't.
Okay.
I really need to drop Audible though, because I have not been listening to books.
Oh, same here.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, and this may be putting the cart before the horse or jumping ahead a little bit, but do you have any goals for 2019? Like, do you think like theater viewings could be something you could?
I haven't thought about it much because just my health has been in the toilet, and so I just haven't been thinking about that stuff. But I talked about doing like a earlier in the year. I don't remember which episode it was, but I talked about trying to find like a top 100 list, like specifically AFIs.
Yeah.
Top 100.
A dent in it.
And just trying to like, I'm not trying to like set like, I want to watch 20 of these this year. Or I want to watch however many. Just be like, I'm going to actively look at this list and seek out films from it this year. Yeah. Whether if I just watch 5 or I watch 10, just start to make my way through one of those lists. Cause there's so many classics out there and like films that are considered to be some of the best of all time that I've never seen.
Same here.
And I wanted to, and you know, I was somewhat inspired by your project. So yeah, I was like, I
thank you.
Kind of want to do that.
Or you're welcome. I don't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of the AFI Top 100, I don't know. Are you aware of the podcast Unspooled?
No.
It's Paul Scheer and film critic Amy Nicholson. It's on the Earwolf Network. Basically, they're going through the AFI Top 100.
Okay.
Like from 2007, I think is when the list was in there, and they're basically going. They're not going in any particular order.
Okay.
Like they just recently did Schindler's List because it was released in theaters back when 2001 was back in theaters. They did 2001.
Okay.
But they're basically going through it and everything. So maybe that could be something that inspires you. Like if
Interesting.
Maybe check out the podcast and
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Well, anyway, I've sang the praises of A-list and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if you got A-list, it would be kind of cool because we could see movies and stuff together.
I know.
You know?
Yeah. It's just like during the week, I don't know when I'm going to get off work.
You know?
I worked till like 8:00 last night.
Oh.
And then like on the weekends, we plan so much stuff. We have so much going on, and
that's understandable.
Yeah, it's just affected the theater viewings.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's fine. You're gonna be getting this gift card. I actually don't know if AMC has like a gift subscription thing or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so this episode, did I even mention what this episode is?
I don't think so.
Jesus Christ. We're reviewing Hold the Dark.
Yes.
Which is the newish, because I think it came out like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
Jeremy Saulnier movie. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original film. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I do have some news to go through on this already off the rails and long-winded podcast. So I'm going to save the big one for last because it's obviously going to be the biggest point of conversation. But in the last week or so, Kevin Hart was announced as hosting the Oscars. Mm-hmm. And then within 12 hours, stepped down because tweets had surfaced from years ago, from like a decade ago, I think, that were homophobic in nature, which is my rap name. And yeah, so he stepped down, like, when it came to light, like, he said, like, he released a statement saying, like, I'm not gonna apologize, like, that's back in the past, I've grown as a person and everything, like, he was not gonna apologize. And then, I guess, stuff happened and he just withdrew from, like, he dropped out of he removed himself from the Oscars.
Yeah.
And then apologized for the tweets also.
Right.
So what do you make of all this?
It's just kind of a weird situation. It's kind of weird that he didn't just come out right out the bat and apologize for it, I guess. I don't know. I think one of the jokes that he had tweeted was like, if he sees his son doing something gay, he's like, no, stop it, that's gay. Like, that's one of the offensive things, I think. And like, I get that. It is a little bit offensive. But that's like a joke from his stand-up. Like, I've seen his stand-up and like, I was like, so I mean, why, they had to go to Twitter to find that? Or like, it's like, I'm not saying he doesn't still believe that or doesn't think that way, but like, I mean, I thought it's kind of funny, but it's also, I can understand why somebody would be offended by it. But I don't necessarily think he needs to apologize for that. But some of the other stuff, was pretty blatant and homophobic. I don't know. I just don't really care that much. But I don't think it's all that controversial. I mean, you don't apologize. Okay. We don't really want you associated with the show then. And I mean, I will say that he kind of, I thought he might have like blown up more or been like, this is bullshit, or like the Oscars just wanted to force me out or something like that. But he totally like came out and was like, no, I mean, I said some bad stuff and I apologize for it. And I don't know.
It's also worth mentioning that the Oscars are broadcast on ABC, which is owned by Disney, which Disney has, a track record.
Right.
But they, what was I going to say? Something about the Oscars. Something like, when Kevin Hart was announced as an Oscar host, I'm indifferent to him as an actor. We've talked about it and everything. But like, I felt like he posted on Instagram, it's been my dream. Like when he was announced as the host, he was like, this has been my dream for like my entire life. It's to host the Oscars and this means the world to me. And I promise I'll do a great job and all that stuff. It was like very heartfelt.
Yeah.
And very sincere. And then, like, I woke up the next morning, it's like, yep, he's out. I'm like, oh, what happened?
Jeez.
And like, we've talked ad nauseum about this the culture we're in, the outrage and the, you know, digging up stuff from people's past online.
Right.
So we don't really need to touch on it that much, but I do want to mention real quick, just this headline. I didn't even really read into the article that much because you'll know why here in a second, but like, the recent, like, I guess this year's, like, Heisman Trophy winner, had to apologize because he tweeted something homophobic when he was 14.
Wow.
And I was like, I get if you're, like, an entertainer and, like, when you were an adult, like, within the past, like, 10 years or so, like, you know, I get the outrage and I get the, you know, everything, but like, think about some of the jokes we made when we were 14 years old.
Right.
Like, that's a kid. Like, I mean, not that people shouldn't be held accountable for the shit that they say online. Like, they should, and I get that, but it's just like, it just seems weird that it's that big a thing for like a 14-year-old. Like, that's what 14-year-old kids are. Like, kids are assholes. Like, that's their thing.
And they're dumb.
They're dumb assholes.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't get it.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. So yeah, anyway, but the big thing that I want to talk about for news, the Avengers trailer came out.
Yeah, it did.
So, have you watched it? How many times have you watched it?
I've only watched it the one time.
Oh, interesting.
Just watched it the once, yeah.
That's very interesting, because I've watched it so many times.
Really?
Yeah, like, I just can't, first of all, I think it's just a perfectly constructed trailer.
It is.
It shows nothing. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The title Avengers Endgame, I knew, like, that's the only title it could have been.
Yeah.
I saw like a clickbait headline that was like, something about like, here's some more information about the surprising title for Avengers 4. Like, this is like after the trailer was released. I was like, that's literally the least surprising title it could have possibly been. Like, the only title for this movie that would have been less, like, surprising or less interesting, I guess, not to downgrade, because Avengers Endgame is a fine name, but like, the only one that would have been like less surprising would have been Avengers Infinity War Part 2.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
that's the only, like, it's expected.
Yeah.
But anyway, what do you make of the trailer? Are you excited about it?
I was just
question.
more like what you said. I was just impressed with the quality of the trailer. How it gave you a lot by showing you so little. Yeah. You know, it just really tapped into the sentiment of the ending of Infinity Wars and stuff like that. Really well constructed, and like, you know, we're used to our trailers being so packed, and like, you can go onto YouTube after a trailer is released and you have 45-minute long reaction videos of people talking about a 2-minute trailer. It's because they pack so much crap in there. Right. And I mean, you could probably still have a 30-40 minute reaction video to this tiny little trailer. Yeah, I'm sure it's out there, but this is like, I don't feel like you need that with this trailer. It was just like, I don't know. It was just so sentimental. Yes. And like in an intimate trailer, and yeah, I enjoyed the shit out of it. I need to watch it some more.
The opening, I need to watch it some more. Like,
I do.
2.5 minute trailer. I need to watch it some more. Any excuse I have to load it and watch it, I watch it.
Wow.
Like, I put together links for our notes for this episode. I put a link to the YouTube trailer just so I had an excuse to look it up and copy and paste it.
Nice.
But just, man, that first sequence, like the opening thing with Tony, like that, like the music that's playing and just the sentiment of that is like just beautiful and
totally
heartbreaking, and it's like, this is a fucking comic book movie.
Yeah.
But the one thing I want to single out about it, is I love two things about it that are connected. One is that Thanos is nowhere in the trailer. I love that. But I love how he's still present, because when it goes to the title, like Endgame appears and it's like glowing purple, and I just love that. It's like this very subtle, like, okay, Thanos is like there.
Yeah.
It's just like his presence is felt in his like color scheme.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah, so I'm so excited for it. April 26th.
Oh man, it's really not that far away.
It's really not.
Yeah.
And like before that, we've got Captain Marvel, which looks amazing.
Looks great. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. Okay. Yeah.
Me too.
Let's get into our review, because we've been talking for like 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
So we're reviewing Hold the Dark. I'm kind of nervous about this because I watched Hold the Dark a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's not really fresh in my mind. So, but I do have some thoughts about it, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Hold the Dark is a 2015 movie, or 2018 movie. Really interesting because the IMDb's user rating is 5.7 out of 10.
It is.
Yeah. Anyway, it's the plot description is: after the death of 3 children suspected to be killed by wolves, writer Russell Core is hired by the parents of a missing 6-year-old boy to track down and locate their son in the Alaskan wilderness. It stars Jeffrey Wright, Alexander Skarsgård, James Badge Dale, Riley Keough, and some other people. Directed by Jeremy Saulnier. Screenplay by his longtime collaborator, Macon Blair, and based on the book by William Giraldi. Jeremy Saulnier is a fresh-faced filmmaker. This is his, I believe, 4th feature film. His first one was 2007's Murder Party, which I know that you bought on DVD.
Haven't watched it.
Haven't watched it.
Yeah.
It is available on Netflix now.
Oh, okay.
He did Murder Party in 2007, Blue Ruin in 2013, and Green Room in 2015. So before we get into our review of Hold the Dark, let's talk a little bit about his films and everything. Starting off with the Murder Party, I did start watching it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of rough. It's pretty cheesy, and I couldn't really get into it, so I stopped about 20 minutes in. So you still haven't seen it?
No, I haven't watched it yet, so I need to.
What'd you think of Blue Ruin and Green Room?
I think they both made my top 10 lists. They were just powerhouse films. I think each of them would probably be in like my top movies for the decade.
Nice.
Probably, especially Green Room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just so powerful such powerful movies. And I think I hate to call it shock value, but like the harshness, I guess, that he's able to just thrust onto screen at any given moment, like the drop of a hat, is just really impressive.
Yes.
And I think that's, again, a skill that's rare, and it's a really refined style that Jeremy Saulnier has woven himself into. And every time that he does it in a film, it just blows me away. We'll talk about it in this movie with Hold the Dark. It's something that I've come to expect with his films, and it just blows me away what he's able to achieve. And like his movies are also very simple. I feel like it's not a real, for the most part, it's not a real complex plot or super crafty dialogue or anything like that. It's very simple and to the point. And at the same time, his movies just feel really dynamic. And I don't know how he pulls that off.
Yeah. I don't know either.
That level of creativity escapes me. But it's on full display on the 3 feature films of his that I've seen.
Yeah.
He's really special.
Oh yeah. Blue Ruin is a movie that I need to watch again, because I saw it once, and I mean, I really liked it, but, I need to revisit it.
Me too.
Green Room blew me away. Like,
yeah.
such an incredible, dark, visceral, violent movie that's just it's one of those movies that it's the type of movie that gets me very excited for a filmmaker, because it's such a strong statement of his talent that it makes me just so anxious and excited to see what he does next and how he evolves as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, having said that, I was excited for Hold the Dark. It being a Netflix movie, I think it had like a limited release in theaters, but I don't think it played around here.
Okay.
But being a Netflix movie, it kind of, I was aware of it, or I was aware of like it being in production, but like once it was released on Netflix, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, I'll see it when I see it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of counterintuitive to what we just said, like the praise we heaped on him as a filmmaker.
Right.
But maybe that's just the Netflix style of releasing and everything. I don't know. But anyway, let's get into Hold the Dark. So, what were your overall non-spoiler thoughts on Hold the Dark?
Overall, well, I mean, spoiler alert for the end of the year, it's going to be in my top 10.
Oh, nice.
Definitely in my top 10. I really liked it, of course. I think of the three, pending a rewatch of Blue Ruin, I think it's probably in third place.
Okay.
But barely. Mm. I mean, it's barely in third place. I talked before, I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, like last year with Wind River. I'm very, very fascinated by stories that take place in like extreme nature, mm-hmm. or isolation, stuff like that, like The Thing, mm-hmm. And Wind River, which I ranked so high last year. I just think those stories are inherently fascinating, just because of the extremes that they go to, and this movie definitely taps into that really, really hardcore, and does so incredibly well. And so that's like the immediate thing that jumped out to me after I had finished the film. And then it's more Jeremy Saulnier being incredible and doing what he does. Those really sheer moments that just grip you, and moments of shock and violence and just things that happen that are beyond belief, really. Mm-hmm. It just absolutely jumps on the screen and hits you right in the face, and it does that so well, and he did that. I think that there's a scene in this movie, a moment, kind of the midpoint, where I think it's one of his best scenes he's ever done. Yeah. As far as like grabbing you that way. So he did that really well, and I enjoyed the performances. I think they were the performances were almost ancillary to the story, in my opinion. I think you could have put shitty actors in this movie and it still would have been a pretty damn good movie, just because the performances to me weren't necessarily the focus.
Right.
But I think everyone involved did a great job. I really enjoyed seeing James Badgedale, because I'm a big fan of his.
Same here.
And he had a huge year. Like, he was in like 5 movies. He was in like Iron Man 3 and like, what's the Benghazi movie, I want to say?
Oh, yeah.
He did like 5 huge movies in 1 year, and I was like, man, that's awesome. And then he just didn't do anything for like 2 years, and I was like, what the hell? But I love him, and this was a really, I think, a pretty meaty role for him, and I'll get into that. But the story is just incredible. I mean, I liked everything about it. It starts pretty slow, I think, and I'll say I think it's of his 3 films that I've seen, I think it's the least accessible for a general audience.
Yeah.
And I'll go into that further as well. It is kind of a confusing movie that doesn't necessarily give you blatant answers, or, you kind of leave wondering some things, and a lot of people don't like that. So I think that could account for some of the 5.7 rating on IMDb. But overall, like, this was my kind of movie. I really dug it. And I was like, I just super into it. I really loved it. So yeah. What did you think of it? How are your overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts, It is my number 3 of the 3 Sonia movies I've seen.
Okay.
Not that close though. Like it's, I mean, it's kind of hard to articulate because technically speaking, there's not much wrong with the movie as a whole. Like there's some things like you touched on not being very accessible to like a broad audience, and I totally fall in that camp. Like I was kind of, it wasn't that I wasn't catching on to what was going on. That was some of it, but I think part of it was like my interest level wasn't like peaked enough to try to piece together some of the more I don't want to say outlandish or absurd, but some of the more abstract things in the movie that are kind of left ambiguous. Like that was kind of the thing that I was just like, I wasn't engaged enough with the movie at a story level to really piece together what they were putting down. And also, I don't think the movie really laid the groundwork for us to really deliver like a meaty like thought experiment like after the movie. Like it didn't, for my taste, it didn't like leave enough for me to really munch on as far as like the implications of the things that I saw in the movie before it ended. Like it didn't leave me enough to really feel like it was interesting enough for me to engage in a mental exercise over it. Okay. Which has me super excited for this review.
Nice.
But it's like, technically speaking, it is a very like technically proficient movie.
Yeah.
I said this in my Letterboxd review, but I love I love seeing Jeremy Saulnier evolve as a filmmaker throughout the 3 movies that I've seen from him, and I'm very excited to see where he goes from here and see what he does next and how he continues to hone what he's like his craft, because he has a very unique style. He has that kind of, he has an interest, like, even though I just kind of shat on the pacing of the movie or the kind of plot elements of the movie, but like he has this gift when it comes to interspersing just really like, I don't want to say casual violence, but like very abrupt and
acute
yeah. And a pretty and no no he has his, he's very astute at just having these spurts of abrupt and vicious violence that feels so genuine or feels so authentic to how it'd be. I'm thinking like in Green Room when Anton Yelchin is like his arm is outside of the door and it gets cut, and it's like, it's not like a big dramatic like moment in the conventional sense. It's like he pulls his arm out and like his arm is damn near severed.
Right.
And like I think that he's tapped into a way to tell his stories and to entertain his audiences in a very visceral and violent way that I don't see being replicated by other filmmakers. It's kind of one of his signatures, and I really appreciate his willingness and talent at depicting that.
Okay.
So like that kind of thing, and like just the showing and filming it in such harsh conditions or harsh weather or harsh climates, I should say, extreme climates is very interesting because you don't really see that much. Like Wind River stands out because that's one of the reasons it stands out. It like Hold the Dark wasn't filmed in a backlot.
Yeah.
But I think just some of the failings of it for me was not even failings. It was just, it didn't engage me the way I wanted it to. I was still interested in it. I have some qualms I'll bring up in spoilers, but overall I thought that it was a perfectly okay movie. It won't make my top 10 list, but I feel like it's a movie that maybe when I rewatch it, it'll grow on me.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it, and I again, just to echo your sentiments, I love James Badgedale.
Yeah.
I'm just glad to see him in really anything.
Yep.
So,
Nice.
yeah. So, what did you think of the kind of plot and some of the more specific aspects of it?
The plot is really interesting because it's again, I think it's very easy to kind of lose sight of what's going on. I mean, I think there's a lot of knowledge or kind of facts, I don't know, like that you would kind of need as an audience member going into it, that like they don't just come out and tell you like this is rural Alaska and like it's a completely different lifestyle than we have in the lower 48. You know, things are way different there, and like they don't necessarily spell that out in the movie.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is just kind of implied, or like you should already know that, I guess, going into the film. And some people might not know that. They may not understand the dynamics of how kind of Native American tribes view or just Native cultures view law enforcement.
Yeah,
that's a big factor in the film. And I feel like those things they maybe could have had a little bit better effort on the part of Macon Blair and Jeremy Saulnier to include those in the film. And I don't think it would have taken away from the movie at all.
Right.
I think it only would have been a positive addition. I don't think it would have been talking down to your audience to put those in the movie. But it didn't bother me personally because I feel like I knew those things a little bit already, and you know, I'm not an expert on those things, or I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've heard that I've had friends who have been to Alaska, or like I've seen shows about Alaska and stuff like that, so I kind of knew that already. But yeah, so I feel like that's a shortcoming of the plot, and it's like you said, not necessarily a failing or a failure, but just a shortcoming. I think I think you could have improved that pretty easily. They could have improved that. That
kind of culture shock in the movie is definitely one of the things that kind of failed me in viewing it in no uncertain terms. It was also kind of the movie, and I'll dance around this and we'll talk in more detail on spoilers, but the movie kind of hints at like the culture being like, I don't know how to describe it, but like there's an element to it that made me feel like it was going to go into like some more kind of ritualistic kind of avenues, and like I feel like the movie didn't pay that off in any way. Okay. And it kind of just felt like it was hinting at something, or hinting at expanding on something from like the inciting incident and the kind of culture shock and the disconnect between law enforcement and like the native people of that area. And I just feel like it didn't, the disconnect between the law enforcement and the citizens and everything like that was paid off very well. But the culture itself wasn't paid off.
I can see that totally. I think you're just objectively correct. Like I think they missed the mark on that. I agree. I don't think they think they could have expanded that a lot more. So.
You're much easier and nicer to talk to than Kirsten.
Really?
But no.
Jeez. Hopefully she doesn't listen to this.
She won't. JK. No, she's always giving me shit. But anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's talk about, I mean, I guess it's not spoilery to talk about the gunfight.
Yeah.
It's weird because in a movie that didn't really resonate with me in any big way, it had one sequence in it that I think would be like one of the best like shot and best executed sequences I've seen in a movie all year.
Yeah.
Just that whole scene was just tension ratcheted up to 11.
Yes.
Like it was so just well done. Is that the sequence that you were referring to?
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
I'm not a person who believes that one scene can make a movie, but if it could this would be a great example of it.
Yeah.
I think that scene is worth the price of it. Like, I think you should see the movie.
Right.
I think it's worth seeing the movie just for that scene. Mm-hmm. I'll put it that way. But I'm not saying that makes the whole movie.
It's worth a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can pay $12 for 1 month just to watch this movie.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I agree with what you said. It's one of the best. I think it's. I kind of wish the movie was better received because I think it could be an epic. A very epic scene that people would talk about.
Yeah.
But I think because of the general reaction to the film, it may not. It may get lost in the ether.
Yeah, and I feel like it shows when I talk about like his evolution as a filmmaker and his growth as a filmmaker. I feel like it shows an interesting mix of him. I wouldn't say leaning into what he does best because that's kind of feels a little disparaging of it, but it seems like he's working at his strength in depicting this just super violent, very tense, just really nerve-wracking sequence. Mm-hmm. But it feels more refined than maybe what he was doing in like Green Room, where that was more. I mean, granted, they're tonally very different films, but Green Room seemed more like shocking. Like it's just the violence and the gore effects were just so like shocking, and like that was the catalyst for the tension that you're feeling when watching that movie. Whereas this is more, we're seeing these spurts of violence and like we're seeing people get gunned down in very graphic ways, but it's not like the tension isn't arising from that depiction. We're not like feeling tense because someone just got a limb blown off or anything.
Right.
We're feeling tense because it's a firefight and it's just really intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what sets it apart from his other scenes of this nature is that, like you said, with Green Room and a little bit of Blue Ruin to a certain extent, is that the violence and action is very abrupt and it's very quick.
Yeah.
It's boom, boom, which
That's
I
true.
feel like that's the reason why it's so appealing is because it's so realistic. Because like most people don't encounter a lot of violence in their lives.
Right.
But when they do, it's like think about a lot of people have been in a car wreck. That's a pretty violent situation.
Yeah.
It's 2 seconds. It's a second
Right.
and a half and it's done. And it's
yeah.
like, oh my God, and your arm's broken or something, or you got a giant gash or something like that. That's why I think it resonates so much in a film like Green Room, is because it's just boom, it's there.
Yeah.
And it's because that's how it is. It's realistic and it's effective. But with this scene, I think because there's so many people involved and it's a firefight,
Yes.
you have to sit with it for a few minutes, and it lasts a few minutes, and it's abrupt, but it lasts a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sets this one apart and makes it unique, and I think one of the more shocking, violent scenes that we've gotten from Jeremy Saulnier so far.
I agree. And like this is the way it sustains itself, and like like you said, it's like 3 or 4 minutes, but the way that the action is depicted, it's not stylized or anything. Like it's not like a big hero moment where you go in and, you know, you're like going after him. I mean, there's maybe not some of that, but like there's like just shots of them like being like freaked out, like the cops being like freaked out and like frozen in terror. But like the way, like you don't, it's interesting because you're absolutely right. He does have a habit of, not habit, but like he has a part of his signature is the abruptness of it. I feel like that sequence, as long as it is, and it was successful in sustaining itself, I think that the reason why it was so gripping is because there are these little moments, like there's so many people involved in it, and like the camera is just moving to different like areas of it. So like you see like panicked cops, you see cops trying to do like one thing, another one like getting in a car and trying to do another thing. And it's like, it's these abrupt violence that kind of, it's a cacophony of violence and different segments of it that's all pieced together through this camera that we're seeing it through. That's just very elegant and tells a very gripping story.
Totally.
Just really and also just super badass.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it is. It's funny because the scene is abrupt and it's not, because there's a huge build up to it. Like you said, that the tension ratchets up, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something sort of new, maybe. I know. I guess there's some moments like that in Green Room, but yeah. But I think just the way that it's a true slow build. It's it was just fucking perfect.
It was one of those things where I had to. Like, when the action started, admittedly, I was kind of tired when I watched it, too.
Yeah.
But, like, when the action started, like, we have, like you said, this build-up toward it. Like, this whole preamble of James Badge Dale talking to another character. Mm-hmm. And that build-up of the tension and everything, like, the screenwriting in that and the performances in that scene were really well done. Because, like, I'm sitting there watching these two men talk, and they're at opposing viewpoints, opposing, like, factions, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah.
But opposing ideals. And the casualness that they're talking, like, I had to rewind it to catch what the guy said to him kind of at the end, because I was like, it was such a matter-of-fact thing. Like, it's a threat.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that is so cold and just really, like, it was kind of chilling, and then everything comes to a head, and it was like, what am I seeing right now?
Yeah.
Just really intense, and I really appreciate the movie for that.
Totally.
Yeah, what did you think of Jeffrey Wright and the whole hunt for the kid?
Yeah, man, that was it was interesting to see Jeffrey Wright in this, because I feel like the character of Russell Crowe is, like, very run down, and, like, he's physically sick, I think, throughout the film, and just emotionally distant, and just not a very personable character. And that's just different for Jeffrey Wright, I think, because I don't know, I feel like, I think about his role in, like, Westworld. You know, he's so animated and just a very, I don't know, very dialogue heavy character, and like, that's not this character at all.
Right. He's kind of stoic.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Conflicted, I guess.
Right. Trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's a good conduit for that, but,
I'm right there with you, buddy.
Yeah. It was just different. Just a very different role for him. But I think he did a great job. I think the standout to me, though, as far as performances go, was, Julian Black Antelope. He played the character of Cheon. Oh, yeah. Who he was the pivotal character in the scene we were just describing. Right. But I think obviously in that scene he's pulling a trigger the whole time. So that's not the scene I'm talking about where he really blew me away. He has these extremely intimate dialogue scenes with Alexander Skarsgård, and most notably the building up of the tension to that gunfight. Yeah, where he's talking to James Badge Dale. I thought that was just remarkable dialogue work.
Same here.
And performance wise, both he and James Badge Dale working off each other was super impressive. I was just really impressed with the way their body language was really good. And just the way they delivered their lines, and there was, like, I mean, I feel like you just understood the dynamic right away.
And it's like, it starts with this tension a little bit, and then as they're talking, the tension is growing, and it's just the way that they're conveying that and imparting that tension on us as the audience is just really spectacular.
Yeah. So,
but it's funny because the scene, I don't know if I'm thinking of any scene in particular, but like the scenes with him and Alexander Skarsgård, where it's kind of like, my memory of it at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like it feels like the dialogue that kind of is supposed to expand some of the story and some of the kind of give us a hint of like stuff that's going on or like what the motivations are and everything. That stuff was kind of lost on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just it kind of got kind of bogged the story down for me that I just couldn't really connect to, and I think that was ultimately what made me not be too thrilled about the movie as a whole, is that I just wasn't on the same wavelength as the story being told.
Yeah, and I totally get that. It was that was a shortcoming of the movie, definitely. Mm-hmm. But there's another scene I'll talk about in spoilers between Jeffrey Wright and James Badgedale that I think is I think it's the encompassing theme of the movie that really drove it home for me.
Okay.
Nice. And so I appreciated that scene a lot. But then Riley Keough, I think that's how you say her name.
Yeah.
I wanted to see more of her. She's not in the movie a lot.
She's not.
Spoiler alert. She's not in the movie a whole lot, but I think when I was first, she's in the first act. Mm-hmm. That's her most prominent presence in the film. I wasn't concentrating close enough on the movie, and that first act is pretty slow. Mm-hmm. And so I really need to watch this a second time to take in more of what she said, the specifics in that first act. But what she did, I enjoyed. I think that's a hard role to play in general. We've talked before on the podcast about how there aren't a lot of great roles for women. Mm-hmm. It's a problem in Hollywood. And this was, I don't know if I would say this is a good role for a woman. Right. I think it is, but, that's just my perspective. But it's definitely a very meaty, hardcore, you're not just playing somebody's mom or love interest in this movie, right? I mean, she does happen to be the wife of a character, but she's not just a mom or a wife in this movie. She's much more than that. And I think that's an important thing to take note of. You know, I feel like the women in Jeremy Saulnier's films they're not just pretty love interest girls, you know. Right. They have a stake in what's going on, and they're pivotal to the action sometimes, and I respect that, and I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of it in this movie. I don't know if I'd call it a shortcoming or a failure, but yeah. So as far as the performances, and I like Alexander Skarsgård. He's really growing on me. I thought, mm-hmm. Seeing him in True Blood and everything, that show was so freaking over the top, and I just absolutely despised that show by the time I quit watching it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that dragged down my opinion of him as an actor. But seeing him in Pretty Little Lies, is that what that was called?
Yeah.
He was phenomenal in that, and he won a Golden Globe Emmy. He won an award for it. Nice. And I was like, absolutely, I would have voted for him. He was phenomenal in that show. So I think he's really coming into his own as an actor. Mm-hmm. And I think he did really good in this as well. Not my favorite role of his, but, yeah, he was great.
Big Little Lies.
Big Little Lies. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's kind of confusing because it's similar to Pretty Little Liars.
Right.
But anyway,
there you go.
Yeah, I liked Alexander Skarsgård a lot. He was very intense.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
There's his introductory scene is just it's really intense
mm-hmm.
and violent and confusing to an extent, but it also sets the stage for his actions, I guess, later in the movie. But it also kind of feels kind of disconnected from everything else in the movie for me. So I'm kind of a mixed bag there, but
gotcha.
But yeah, should we go into spoilers?
We should go into spoilers. Okay. I was just about to say that.
Yes. So, all right, we are going to go into spoilers for Hold the Dark. It is available on Netflix. If you want to skip the spoilers, check the show notes, which can be found at obsessiveviewer.com/OV261. Also in the, show notes of the app you're using. And skip over to Potpourri. So I'm going to play a bit from the trailer, and then we are going to go into spoilers for Hold the Dark.
Dear Mr. Core, 3 days ago my son Bailey was taken by wolves. No one in the village will hunt them. My husband will come home from the war soon. I must have something to show him. So you come to kill it? To kill the one that took him?
I came to help if I can. To explain this if I can.
Okay, so Tiny, expand on what you were saying about a pivotal scene that kind of encompasses the entire movie.
Yes, so it's the scene where after the big gunfight, Russell Crowe, Jeffrey Wright's character, is having dinner with James Badgedale and his wife at his house. And it's like after dinner, they're like doing the dishes and they're talking, and basically they say that they come to the conclusion that like they don't understand what's going on, but it's because but they don't make a moral judgment on it. That's what's interesting about it, is they say like, I think they say like I wish I looked through the IMDb quotes for the movie and it's not in there. I wish it was. I don't remember exactly what they said. But they said like, Jeffrey Wright says something to the extent of, I don't understand why she did what she did. Medora, I think is her name. Yeah, Medora Sloan. I don't understand why Medora did what she did, but it's because of my perspective or something like that. And I think it really taps into the main theme of this film, which is like, it's a very, to boil it down, it's a very clear-cut man versus nature story, and obviously there's man versus man conflict as well, and there's a giant gunfight.
Sure.
But I think ultimately the premise or the theme that drives the plot is the fact that when you stick people into this extreme nature, it has such an effect on them that it kind of personifies itself in a family unit like this. Because what happens in the film, I'm glad we're in spoilers now because I can just get it out.
Right.
Essentially, the Sloan family is like a pack of wolves, and the mother, in order to survive, kills her young, which happens in nature. They show it when Jeffrey Wright goes hunting looking for the wolf pack, and they're literally eating one of their young. And it plays into the title "Hold the Dark" because during the solstice, there's only a few hours of daylight every day, and it really has a huge effect on the nature up there because things die and they have to go into hibernation, and so food sources get really scarce for the wolves, so they sometimes have to resort to eating their young just to survive. My problem with that is that I don't understand why she had to kill her young to survive.
That's my hang-up too.
Right. Yeah, I don't understand why she had to kill her son. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I still don't understand her motivation for that.
Right.
But I understand the nature of it. I understood that's what he was going for, but I think that, to me, that is the biggest shortcoming of the film, is I don't understand why she killed her son.
Well, as we've already established in this recording, kids are dumb.
Yeah, they are. So, kids be dumb.
Yeah. But no, you mentioned that essentially the Sloans are a wolf pack. And it's, I like that, but I also, I don't know. This isn't good podcast. I don't care. Okay. It's just, it's really, I'll need to see the movie again with a fresh perspective. One thing in like that actually sheds a lot of light on what I'm about to bring up. Did you get any inclination, or did you notice or know that the Sloans, Riley Keough and Alexander Skarsgård, are siblings?
Oh, they are?
Yeah, like they're siblings that, banged it out, and like they.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, and that's. I was trying to find like where I read about that, because like there's a lot of stuff on.
Is that in the movie? Did you pick that up in the movie?
That to an extent. And
really?
Like,
I completely missed that.
Yep, and because it's not there, like it's
really,
yeah, because like I was so kind of annoyed by the movie because like because the ending, I was like, what are they trying to say? Like, what is the end of this movie? Like, what is this about? And, I think I found it. Okay, so I'm just going to read from this, article from Thrillist. Let's see. The film is based on a novel by William Giraldi, which gets a little more explicit as the plot unravels and the bodies pile up. Though the connection between Medora and Vernon, two Nordic-looking people who stand out amid the largely indigenous population of Kilut, isn't defined on screen, it is in the text. They're twins, which obviously makes the fact that they live as husband and wife a bit strange, to say the least. And while Saulnier's film doesn't really assign a motive to Medora's infanticide, Giraldi's work describes her emotions surrounding the birth of Bailey. In one portion, it reads, quote, "The first day she was alone with her child, she fought an urge to toss him into the fire. She was convinced that his birth meant the death of her." And like, and the kind of twin thing is hinted at just very subtly. When Jeffrey Wright asks her a question when they're walking somewhere, he asks her a question about Alexander Skarsgård, and then she says, "I've known him my entire life," or "We've known each other our entire lives." And like, that's way too subtle.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, I feel like that, it feels like the movie was just actively, maybe not actively, but like just was way too, what's the word I'm looking for? Vague about certain things. Like not explaining why she killed the kid.
Yeah.
Not really going into detail about the relationship and who they are. Like, those are like characterizations that I think would be more interesting and integral to the movie, in the overall experience, but we don't get that. So like, it really kind of bugged me that I had to read like an explanation, online. And it just, I don't know, it bugged me. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, does that change your perspective at all, or?
Not really, but knowing it frustrates me a little bit more because like I said, you could have, like I said about some of the other stuff, you could have easily included that into the plot, or like fucking just told us that. I mean, just, it could have been in the movie. It's not in there. Like, no, that's so weird. It could have been in there without taking away from the movie. I think it would have actually added to the movie and made it better.
Absolutely.
If that was in there. That's really odd.
Yeah.
I mean, that I don't know, maybe that does have a bit of a negative effect on my opinion of it, but dang, that's just kind of a shame.
Yeah, and I felt like the entire movie was setting up some kind of ritualistic kind of sacrifice or ritualistic something, because they put the body like in a box, and then like the last shot of the movie is them getting the body and then walking into the wilderness, and I'm like, that's why, like, you saying that, like, they're like a wolf pack or whatever kind of connects a little bit to me, but I'm like, I don't, like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, is this, like, are they going to, like, a pet cemetery to reanimate the kid? Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And, like, I get it, like, twins have this connection, and, like, they can, you know, twins have this weird connection, but, like, I'm not their twin. I can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah, that bothered me a little less than it did you, I think. Just because I think there was this whole subtext of this kind of native spirituality that they're all akin to that we're not.
Right.
But it's all kind of, you know, like, oh, the wolf spirit embodies this family or something like that. I'm not trying to, you know, shit on that culture. Sure. I'm just saying, that's kind of a general thing, I guess, or I'm really not articulating it well. But I think that's something that you can kind of pick up on in the film, is that there's this whole culture there and spiritual influence from the native people who are from there, that I don't necessarily need the details on.
Right.
But I know that that's what's driving this.
Yeah.
But I don't need to know, okay, because they're doing this, it means that it's going to be this, and it's the spirits of the sky are going to, I don't need to know all that.
Right.
So that didn't bother me. And even the final scene, I think I was satisfied with them carrying the body into the woods, because I was like, I don't necessarily need to know what they're going to do, but, but again, the biggest thing is that I don't know why she had to kill her kid. She wasn't starving.
Right.
The kid wasn't threatening her. I don't understand. I mean, as far as we know, anyways. So yeah, that's the biggest shortcoming, and I wish that would have been in the film. Another thing that was really interesting was, I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of the wounding in the film happened in the neck.
Yeah.
So Alexander Skarsgård got shot in the neck.
Right.
That's why he gets to come home. James Badge Dale was killed by an arrow through the neck.
That was... Okay, yeah. That was just really well done.
It was.
Like, that was so cool. And, like, it sucked. Like, I'm sad for the character, but... Man, that was cool.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to make it. I didn't.
Me too.
I mean, it was kind of, well, I didn't necessarily think he was.
They telegraphed it a little bit.
They did telegraph it, yeah, that he was probably going to die, but I thought he might survive despite that. But anyways, I think the whole wounding of the neck thing really played into the wolf aspect of it, because when dogs fight, that's what they do. They go for the neck.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was just kind of a fun little feature of the movie. And I think I also think it's interesting how much Russell Crowe is kind of like the personification of, like, I feel like personification plays a big role in the film, because James Badge Dale is like representative of the laws of man, stuff like that, and then the Sloane family is very the natural order of things, and Russell Crowe is very much the representative of just humanity in general. And I think as throughout the film he feels this urge to reach out to his daughter and connect with her, and then at the end he finally does, and I feel like he was so out of place and so exposed in this extreme natural setting that at the very end he had to, it was kind of a happy ending that he was finally able to reconnect to his source of humanity through his daughter.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people tapped or, caught into those themes, or if that was just something I picked up on.
I didn't, but I feel like revisiting the movie with that in mind will heighten the experience for me.
Okay.
As frustrating as the movie could be, as far as kind of not explaining some things or not connecting certain things with me.
Right. And I know, like, in some Native American cultures, they're very resistant to man-made laws. They're very much, believers in natural law, and like, you die when you die. If you catch a disease, the disease kills you. And it's just like, you're not going to tell me that, if this woman kills her son, we're going to deal with it ourselves.
Right.
And I think I still just love the dynamic of the extreme setting. Like in Alaska, like we think of, people forget how big Alaska is. Like a county is like the size of a lot of states.
Right.
And so your county police department, like the Emory police, they talk about it in the movie, Keelut, the village, quote unquote, which is basically 20 people in 3 houses. Right. That's an hour away from Emory. And it's like, that's not an effective way to police.
Right.
Or to, to protect a community.
Sure.
And that, I think that sentiment really pervades Native American culture and the whole conflict with, the forced modernization of Native American cultures, and I appreciated seeing that, and I think that's one of those things that maybe an audience, someone watching the movie, may not know.
Yeah,
that they could have laid out in the movie a little more. I appreciated the hell out of it, and I think it was handled well, but But yeah, I can understand why someone could see the movie and be like, hey, why was this, what's his, gosh, I can't remember his name, Cheon. Why was this Cheon guy so aggressive towards the cops? Like,
right.
I don't, like, you know, and it's because of that. It's because they want to, you know, they want to live by their own rules and their own culture, and they don't trust the laws of the white man. And like,
right.
I understand that, you know, I can understand why some people feel that way.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember there was this guy we used to work with. So this guy we used to work with, he was a really good wrestler, and like his wrestling team, like I think they traveled to Alaska and actually like wrestled a bunch of high school, when he was in high school, wrestled like a bunch of high school guys from Alaska, because in Alaska there's like no competition because there's like 30,000 people in the whole state.
Oh.
And like this, you could have a really good wrestling team in this town, but the only other good wrestling team is 8 hours away. So there's no way it's just like impossible for them to get together and wrestle.
Yeah.
So there's like no competition. And so like sometimes sports teams like football, basketball, whatever will like travel from the lower 48 up to Alaska just so those kids could have an experience of what it's like to play sports against.
I had no idea about that with our coworker.
Yeah, he told me about it once. I was like, it was an interesting story he told me. They beat the living shit out of him because they have no competition. It's just like they just wrestle each other, and they don't, you know, it was interesting to hear him talk about it. But that's just one of those things. It's like, I think life in Alaska is really fascinating. I think when people live in a place where people aren't really meant to survive, it's really fascinating to just the extremes that they have to go to. Just like when it's 30 below zero and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, that dictates your entire day.
Yeah.
Like your whole day is about surviving that.
Right.
And that just, it amazes me that people live there, and like, I find it really fascinating. There's a couple of shows I want to say on like Discovery Channel, maybe National Geographic. I think one of them is called like Life Above Zero. Okay. And it's about people who live above the Arctic Circle.
Oh, interesting.
And it's fascinating as hell. It's literally, they just survive all day. They don't like get up and go to the work with their travel mug of coffee. Like they get up and try to collect firewood so they don't freeze to death at night. And it's just like, that's how they live, and they enjoy living that way. It's just, I find it really fascinating. Yeah. And so when a really prominent filmmaker does a story like this, I'm just all over it. And so yeah, I mean, I really love the movie. Like,
nice. Would you rather live in Alaska or Hawaii?
I live in Anchorage. Okay. Because that's like they say it in the movie, they don't consider Anchorage. A lot of people in Alaska don't consider Anchorage part of Alaska because it's so far south. It's so different. It's on the coast. But I would consider going to Anchorage. Interesting. One of our patrons, friend Matt Andreyko, actually has been to Anchorage. He and his wife did an Alaskan cruise.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, so he has some cool Alaska stories as well.
Nice.
I think he said a gallon of milk is like $8 there.
Oh, whoa.
Because there's no dairy farms within 2,000 miles of Alaska. Sense. And it all has to be, I know this from working in the trucking industry, very little, everything in Anchorage, pretty much everything in Anchorage, which is where most of Alaskans live, pretty much everything has to be imported. Right. Because they don't make things there because it's hard to, you can't grow anything. Like they just don't make very much stuff there. Huh. And it's so far away from the lower 48 that to drive trucks there is not efficient at all. Because you can send a truck there with a bunch of shit, but there's nothing for it to bring back. Right. Because they don't make anything there. So everything comes in on boats. And so it's really slow and it's expensive. Yeah. And so you got to bring all your milk in on a boat, and it's expensive because that's an expensive, slow way to do it. So he was just saying, like, Matt was telling me how just about everything is so much more expensive because it's basically like buying everything as an import. Wow. So it's just a really fascinating place. And
it sounds like it. Yeah. I would go with Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame you at all. Yeah.
Tour the lost locations, Jurassic Park.
I just hate the heat. I can't stand the heat. Yeah. So, yeah.
I get enough.
I'd go on vacation to Hawaii. That'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be cool. Learn about the volcanoes and stuff.
Yeah, Yeah.
I'd do that.
The smoke monsters and
Right, the smoke monsters,
the others.
the hatch,
Yeah.
the capsule in the ground.
Yeah. All right, so I think we've effectively reviewed this movie.
Yeah. I gave it a 4.5 on Letterboxd.
Oh, wow.
I believe, and I gave it 8.5 on IMDb.
Nice.
Yeah.
I gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd and a little heart because
Nice.
even with my issues with it, I still enjoyed it. And
Okay. Do you think it'll be an honorable mention even, or just probably not? No,
won't
won't
be.
make that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I totally get it. Like, if anyone, like the qualms you had, I have qualms with it too.
Sure.
But there's just so many other things that it's totally a personal thing. Like, I think objectively, the movie has some big issues that I think make it difficult to enjoy for most people. But for me, it has a lot of stuff that I like. And so I think that's why, for me personally, it just really spoke to me. And that's why I liked it so much.
Well, that's cool. Hopefully when I revisit it at some point, I'll gain a better appreciation of it, or I can look past the qualms I have with it. But
okay, cool.
Overall, I thought it was okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, so we just had a spoiler discussion about Hold the Dark, and we're going to go into Potpourri. But before we do that, I'm going to mention, I forgot to say this before, I mentioned going to Patreon and becoming a Patreon supporter. As we've been doing the last several weeks, we have recorded bonus content specifically for Patreon. So, if you get on board our Patreon subscription train, you'll get access to an exclusive RSS feed with, basically my goal is anytime we release an episode of the podcast, it will also release a short exclusive snippet of a conversation or exclusive recording, for the Patreon, patrons. So that's incentive to check it out. Yeah, and this one in particular, we talked a little bit about Black Klansman and the new The Grinch that I just saw today. So go on Patreon and subscribe. A rate of $1 a month is minimum, and you'll get access to the RSS feed. But Tiny,
yes sir,
let's do some potpourri.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so for listeners of the podcast, first-time listeners, Potpourri is a section of the podcast where we talk about whatever we want, anything we're watching or anything that we've seen or looking forward to. Anything we want, as long as it smells good, it's the Potpourri section. So, Tiny, I have 2 things I want to bring up, and you have...
just one thing.
One thing. Okay, so I'll start us off, and then you'll go after me.
Okay.
I want to talk really... I'll have to be somewhat brief because it might bleed into the year in review episode.
Okay.
I watched the movie The Tale.
Okay.
It is...
I don't think I'm familiar with that.
Yes. So The Tale, let me read the plot description. I believe that it is an HBO movie, or it was bought by HBO. The plot description is a woman filming a documentary on childhood rape victims starts to question the nature of her childhood relationship with her writing instructor and running coach. It stars Laura Dern as well, I'll get to that in a second. Laura Dern, Elizabeth Debicki, who was in Widows, Ellen Burstyn is in it, Common is in it, Jason Ritter. It's a really strong cast, but the really interesting thing about it is that this movie is a true story.
Oh.
And it is written and directed by a documentary filmmaker named Jennifer Fox, who she basically, she made the movie as close to her true story as she could.
Wow.
And it is like it's very powerful because Laura Dern plays her. She plays Jennifer Fox, the documentarian.
Okay. And
the entire movie is her coming to grips or uncovering, I don't want to say blocked memories, but like uncovering the truth of her nature, of the nature of her relationship with these much older people when she was very young. This sexual abuse that she suffered. it is one of the some snippets from my Letterboxd review. It's one of the year's most powerful movies. It's just so gripping and fascinating to me and commendable that Jennifer Fox made this movie. Like, she went through sexual abuse when she was 13 years old, and the decision to make this movie and to not only make the movie but use her own name and her own, like, her story. It feels like it's such a cathartic and emotionally it puts her in such an intensely vulnerable situation as a filmmaker, and it resonates so much more. Like, this movie does not it doesn't sugarcoat the sexual abuse. Like, it's not like a film, like, it's not like a movie that just basically, like, hints at, like, oh, this is what happened and everything. It's like, there are depictions of sexual abuse in the movie, like, so much so that there was a title card at the end of the movie that says any scene involving sexual encounters with a child were filmed with an adult body double. Which, duh. Yeah. But also just the fact that particular disclaimer had to be put in the film, like, at the end of the film, should really speak to how graphic, and I don't want to say graphic because it's not like a gratuitous kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like just how raw and uncomfortable the depictions of sexual abuse are. It's rape. Sexual abuse. Right. It's flat out rape. Right. And Jason Ritter and Elizabeth Debicki, they play, basically, the movie is Laura Dern kind of uncovering the truth of what happened to her when she was 13. But it is interspersed with several, like, flashbacks to her at 13. And, like, there are some very just incredible, like, filmmaking techniques at work here. Like, like there's like, it plays with perspective a little bit. Like, when she, an example, something that really struck me about the movie was that we get, like, the kind of inciting thing of the movie is that Jennifer gets this call from her mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, who I was weirdly, like, thrilled to see her in a movie, because I haven't seen her in a movie in a while. And she's fantastic. She plays Jennifer's mother. She calls Jennifer and says, "Hey, I found this story you wrote when you were in 8th grade. Please call me. I'm going to send it express mail to you. You need to call me. I'm very worried." And, like, that kicks off this whole thing where Jennifer's like, well, you know, she's just freaking out because I had an older boyfriend when I was a kid. A boyfriend that was older than me. And then, like, it shows, like, her, like, it flashes back to, there's, like, the one, like, pivotal thing, and I won't go into too much detail at all. Like, this will be me wrapping up because I want to leave some stuff for people to watch, or to people to experience it. But, like, there's this amazing technique where she remembers, like, an encounter, or remembers, like, the first, like, time that she met Elizabeth Debicki and Jason Ritter in the film, or what have you. And the actress that plays her in the flashback is, like, 15, 16 years old. Like, she's like, clearly a more grown young adult than a 13-year-old. And then when Jennifer is looking through pictures and stuff, she's like, wait, this is me and this is me when I was 13. And, like, then it flashes back and shows, like, the actual, like, age and how small. So, like, it's a very interesting technique in which it shows, like, how her perception changes of the past, because she thought, like, oh, she's much older. She experienced, like, from her perspective and her kind of shielded, like, mental state of it, that, she was a young adult. She was a young woman experiencing, like, that. And then, like, she finds out, like, oh, wait, he was actually this age. I was actually this age. This is how small I was. I was a child. Like, it's just, and, like, the movie goes through so much stuff, and then by the end, like, it's just so emotionally just powerful. Just and all of that in the fact that it's her story, Jennifer Fox's true story, her, like, putting her name in it as the central character. Like, it feels so raw, so emotional, and, like, you can feel the catharsis that she's going through as she's making this movie. And it's just something that I'm just so impressed by, just the fact that she had like the fortitude to put that out there, to really, like, we talk about people like bleeding for their art and everything. Like, this is such a raw depiction of her life.
It's brave as hell.
It's incredibly brave.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's so amazing.
Wow.
I like it's probably going to be somewhere on my list.
Okay, wow. I just put it on the list of movies to watch because it
is on HBO.
It is okay.
Yeah, so if you have HBO, you can watch it there.
It sounds really powerful.
Yeah, just, and they're so, like, man, and it's really incredible. So that's The Tale. It's on HBO, and it'll probably be discussed here in a few weeks.
Wow. That sounds incredible.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Also, side note, and apropos of nothing, I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2, and in that game, if you try to, like, search the saddlebag of a horse, or if you, like, punch a horse or something, it will kick you violently. And I wasn't expecting that in the game when I first did it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of triggered or uncovered, like, developed a deep-seated fear of horses now for me. Because like Elizabeth Debicki in The Tale plays Jennifer's riding instructor, because she's horse riding. Okay. And, like, there's a scene, like the scene that I talked about, that switched the perspective and switched the actress, like when Jennifer realizes the perspective shift. The scene involves her walking a horse into a stall, and, like, because of fucking Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm sitting there, like, tense as hell. Like, get this girl away from the horse.
Oh my god.
So that was stupid. But anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's my first potpourri. I really hope you see it.
She was one of my favorite parts of Widows, Elizabeth Debicki.
Me too.
She was really good in that.
You should listen to mine and Kirsten's review.
Of Widows?
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. So for my potpourri, I was going to talk about the second season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes, and you raved about the first season.
First season's phenomenal.
Nice. Have you
really
finished
good.
The second season?
Finished the second season.
Nice.
Yeah. We watched it.
Just came out.
Yeah, we watched it in the whole weekend. We watched it
awesome.
in one weekend. Yeah, my wife and I. So we actually watched. This is bad. We watched the first 9. It's 10 episodes. We watched the first 9. We watched like 6 on Saturday. And then we watched like 3 on Sunday morning. And then we had to go run an errand and do some stuff. And we didn't realize that the finale was the only one we had left.
Oh.
And so, like, we came back home and, like, we turned on Sunday night, we turned on the TV and went to the app and opened up Prime and went to the second season. And we're scrolling there. She's like, oh my, this is the last, like, it was totally just total millennial shock, you know. We're like, oh man, we got to wait a whole nother year.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we flew through it in 2 days.
Nice. How does it stack up against the first season? And it's about a woman in the 50s doing stand-up comedy? Yeah,
actually, if you look at the description on IMDb, it just says, a housewife in the 1950s decides to become a stand-up comic.
Nice.
That's all you really need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes from there. The first season was substantially better.
Okay.
But the show is just so good that I still... The second season is still just absolutely terrific.
Nice.
I think the second season expanded on the characters a little bit more.
Okay.
I think the first season is so much like, I would almost say culture shock, because stand-up comedy wasn't really much of a thing in the 1950s yet. and it definitely wasn't a thing for women to do. And so I think there's all this kind of, a woman going out and getting a job and getting into an entertainment job like that. It's totally a man's job. That's a whole culture shock thing. And then just the 1950s affluent Jewish family. Everyone all the main characters are Jewish, and they talk about that. It's very prominently featured in the show. And just all that there's just a lot of culture shock in the first season. They really bring you into it and throw you into it, and you immerse yourself in all those cultures and all those ideas that were driving thought and culture in the 1950s. That it's so fascinating to dive into. In the second season, you're already kind of there, and so that joy that you have in the first season of being introduced to all this crazy stuff is gone a little bit.
Okay.
And so I think the show really had to overcome that. And so what they did is they just really dove into characters, which wasn't a bad thing. It was really interesting. They expanded Tony Shalhoub's character a lot, which was a fantastic decision because he is just hilarious.
That's awesome.
So fun. I mean, he's, the guy won however many Emmys playing Monk for a decade.
Right.
He did that for a reason because he's just a terrific actor. Very idiosyncratic and very, tense. He's just a great actor, and his character is just so funny because he's such a picky guy, and so, for lack of a better term, he's just so Jewish. It's really funny. And then what's his name? Gosh, I forgot. This is terrible. Pollock. Gosh, Kevin Pollock. Thank you. I couldn't think of his first name. Kevin Pollock plays the father-in-law of the main character.
I didn't even know he was in it.
Yeah, he's also just hysterical in it. So, the second season was really impressive as well, but definitely a significant drop off from the first season.
Interesting.
I feel like there was a lot of, she's still trying to develop her career as a stand-up comedian, and she's gaining a lot of traction in the second season, which is really interesting. She's friends with Lenny Bruce in the show, he was a real guy, a real stand-up comedian in the 50s and 60s in New York City. And so it's interesting to see, how her career takes off because of that, and how she's influenced by Lenny Bruce, and they expand more on that in the second season. So that was really satisfying. But I mean, more than anything, it is such a gorgeous show. I mean, the sets, the costumes, Rachel Brosnahan, the lead, she's very into fashion. Her character is very into fashion. So she's wearing a different, bright, beautiful, loud outfit.
Okay.
In like every scene. I mean, not just every episode, every scene. It's really incredible. They joke about it, how she has, it's funny. You'll go into a room in their apartment and it's racks of clothes of hers. Like the whole room is a closet. It's pretty funny. So, the costumes and the sets, the cars, just everything is just gorgeous. She works in a department store as well. B. Altman's, which was a real department store.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like a family-owned store in New York City. It's kind of legendary, apparently. I'd never heard of it, but she works
Altman's?
there. B. Altman's.
Altman's.
Yeah,
okay.
so.
Should I have said Ben Altman's when I talked about our new Patreon subscriber?
So anyways, no, that's, okay. You're hilarious. But no, it's funny because it's a very, it's what you think of like Ellis Ayres or like JCPenney being, or Macy's back in the day, just super customer based, and there's all these salespeople and just floating around. It's just a very romantic show in that regard. Sure. So I love it for that. I think just the aesthetics alone, I think, are kind of worth watching the show.
Okay.
It's just a beautiful show.
It seems like the kind of show that would have good like production values.
Totally. It reminds me of like Mad Men in that regard.
Nice.
Which is something that I think kept me coming back to Mad Men for seasons. I never finished that show, but it has that same quality to it. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. We landed on the moon and
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, worth mentioning, Alex Borstein.
You mentioned her about season 1.
Yeah, one of the standouts. She's hilarious.
Nice.
Just like she's the kind of anti-woman.
Right.
She's very foul-mouthed. She always wears pants. Mm-hmm. She's just not a 1950s woman, so she's very fish out of water. Mm-hmm. A lot of comedy opportunities in that. She's hysterical on the show.
Nice.
So, yeah, and one of the things they highlighted in the second season, real quickly, back in the 50s and 60s, like, parenting wasn't, like, it wasn't all like, oh, I'm going to read this new parenting book, and it wasn't like, this is my... when you have your kids, like you go to the hospital, squeeze it out, and you leave. It wasn't like, and you have your nursing specialist and your, pediatric nutritionist and all. Like they didn't have that shit back then. It was like, they're alive. Okay, fine. Go outside and play. Leave me the fuck alone. Like that's, and it's funny because on the show, the main character has 3 children now. Oh. I forgot because the kids are not characters. Like they're just, you see them, but they hardly ever say anything.
Is that intentional?
Yeah, and they're like, everyone will just leave the apartment, and then the camera will just be sitting there on the door for like 5, 6, 7. Then they'll come back in. Who's going to watch the kids? Because they'll forget that there's kids sitting in the apartment.
That's awesome.
Like that's how people parented back then. It was like, just sit there and watch TV, or like just. I don't know. It was it's really funny. Like it's whenever it comes up how they parent the kids. It's pretty funny. So
nice. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm gonna definitely have to watch that.
Please do.
Yeah, like I feel like I've got a lot of irons in the fire for 2019 in terms of movie watching and everything. But I want to try to just get back into the rhythm of like watching TV regularly.
Yeah,
like TV shows, because this year has been concentrated on watching a bunch of movies and stuff, and like I feel like I'm losing out on like, because I've like sampled some shows. Like I watched the first episode of Jack Ryan, and I watched the first episode and a half of the second season of Westworld, and I was just like, I kind of dozed off during the second episode.
Okay.
And it's I don't know. I need to sit down and watch more TV.
Gotcha. My 2018 was the exact opposite.
Oh yeah,
mostly TV, not enough movies. Nice. Yeah.
Well, if you get A-list, we can swap. That's cool.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. So that's the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. It is on Amazon Prime.
It is.
Yeah. And anything else, or should I wrap us up with my last potpourri?
Go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. So in our aforementioned Patreon exclusive clip or recording, I had asked Tiny a question. Tiny, you referenced Green Book and how you kind of wanted to see Green Book by the end of the year. I saw Green Book.
Okay.
And it's funny because like I wrote out like a review on Letterboxd that was very I don't know what I don't know. It was not the same kind of review I usually write. Like it was more politically charged, maybe not politically charged, but more about like how problematic the movie is in terms of race and depicting the story and everything. It got no likes on Letterboxd, so I don't know. Maybe I'm off base. Like you be the judge of this here. Like time was like one time Fecus was on the podcast and I had talked to him about Remember the Titans. And like I think you and I had a conversation about it off mic about it too.
Okay.
Just the kind of Disneyfication of like the civil rights era, and
that movie doesn't hold up as well as you would think.
It really doesn't.
Remember the Titans,
It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And it is kind of like my perspective on it is that like it seems like the type of movie that I don't want to say sugarcoats the civil rights era, or it sugarcoats the it depicts a sugar-coated version of racism of the era. And like so you see the students bonding over football, and like they're overcoming this racism that's very PG-13 Disney-fied kind of versions of it. Like the true, like, civil rights era was filled with just horrendous racism and, like, just violence. And I feel like it's just a disservice to, you know, depict that era in a way that lessens the horrendous nature of the actual, like, racism, like, it seems like those types of movies, and I'll get to Green Book here in a moment, I promise. It seems like it's conveying, like, oh, you know, they had segregation back then. Oh, look how crazy it was back then. But it's like, it's not really showing, like, the way that an entire race of people were, you know, dehumanized and viewed as less than human, essentially, by the most extreme racists of the time, and who are many of which are still alive today.
Yeah,
running the country. But
nice. I was gonna say, which is alive today and voting for Donald Trump,
right? But Green Book is a very problematic movie. It is the story of, let me pull it up here. Green Book, according to IMDb, is a working-class Italian-American bouncer becomes the driver of an African-American classical pianist on a tour of venues through the 1960s American South. It's got Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. Also, Linda Cardellini is in it as well. Directed by Peter Farrelly, of the Farrelly brothers.
Interesting.
Of Dumb and Dumber. There's Something About Mary.
Yeah.
And written by. This is one of the problems that I have with it. This is going to be tricky. Written by Nick Vallelonga, Brian Hayes Curry, and Peter Farrelly. Nick Vallelonga is the son of Viggo Mortensen's character. This is a true story.
Oh, okay.
And the other two writers, of course, Peter Farrelly and the other guy, are both white men. And, like, it feels like the movie is supposed to be this kind of endearing or powerful, like... okay, the movie is a hokey, kind of feel-good depiction of... friendship overcoming racism in the Deep South in 1962.
Okay.
And when I go into detail about this, it's not to say that it's not an important subject. It is a very important subject, and the story of Tony Lip is Viggo Mortensen's character's name, and Don Shirley is Mahershala Ali's character's name. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting enough one, but the movie is this PG-13 schmaltzy, feel-good movie that feels so disingenuous. It is, first of all, the movie is Viggo Mortensen's movie. It's about Tony Lip. Mm-hmm. And he's depicted as a racist. Like, one of the opening scenes is that he's in his house and they have, contractors in working on the sink or something. And they're two black men, and then, Viggo Mortensen's wife gives them a glass of milk or something, and they drink out of the glass, and then you see Viggo Mortensen throw the glass away.
Okay.
And so the whole movie is like his kind of redemption, I guess, or him coming around to, you know, not being a racist, which is a noble, you know, everything, or it's a noble, like, idea, but it just feels... It feels so watered down. Hang on. Let me actually. Okay. Here, perfect example. There's a scene where Mahershala Ali's character is at a bar, and he is. There are three white men who are threatening physical violence on him. And Viggo Mortensen comes in and saves the day. The white guys at the bar are the most cartoonish, like, greaser, bad guy things, mugging for the camera, look like they can't act for shit. And it's like, it's so just forced and awkward. And the fact that this movie is co-written by like the son of Viggo Mortensen's character, it just seems like, let me read an excerpt from my Letterboxd review, because this kind of sums up my thoughts on it. It doesn't help matters that the movie's credited writers are all white men and its director is a white comedy director. I feel like easy and safe feel-good movies like Green Book are exactly why movies like Get Out, Black Klansman, Blind Spotting, and Sorry to Bother You need to exist, because they're speaking in a much bigger way to the effects of racism and the institutions in our society that facilitate it still today. What movies like Green Book accomplish is giving the audiences a chance to say, wow, times were really different back then, and then pat themselves on the back for being so progressive.
Right.
And like that kind of sums up how I feel about this type of movie. And what kind of troubles me is like, this movie was nominated for a couple Golden Globes. It got the Audience Award at TIFF. And I'm just like, this is mediocre filmmaking at best.
Wow.
And it's just, it feels like it's just this, I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, because I'm a 32 white man in Indianapolis, but it kind of just feels like the kind of feel good, hokey movie about you know, a very dark chapter in our history that's made for white people to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, it bugs me to no end, especially when we're in an era where we have several films by minority filmmakers that are speaking so truthfully to the experience of being a minority in this country. It feels just like it's not, it really, really rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay.
So yeah. So
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Kind of like your description made me think of like The Help, the movie The Help.
Yeah.
Which I didn't hate that movie. I kind of like that movie to an extent, but
I never saw it.
Okay, it's kind of a white woman's feel good story,
right?
It
reminds me, a little bit of The Blind Side also.
Okay. Yeah.
White savior movies.
Right.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And it's funny because in the movie Instant Family, with Mark Wahlberg and Rose Byrne, they go to a foster family class. There's one recurring character throughout the movie who she wants to adopt a young black athletically
gifted
kid, and like they call attention to it, like Mark Wahlberg's like that's a blindside. You're trying to blindside a kid. Like and it's like the movie was just, I was lukewarm on it, but like that bit was hilarious.
That's funny.
But yeah, so anyway, Green Book, when the Oscar nominations come out, and if it gets nominated, I'm gonna go on a soapbox, and then
gotcha.
Ben, when he's on to talk about them, he's gonna regret giving us any money.
Very much, yes.
Yeah, but anyway,
that's kind of a shame. I thought it looked kind of good.
Me too. I mean, the cast,
yeah.
Viggo Mortensen's great. Mahershala Ali is one of my favorite actors.
He's crushing it right now.
Like if you were to tell me like a year or two ago that I'd be super excited for True Detective season 3, I would have been like, well, no, did you see season 2?
Right.
I mean, come on. But Mahershala Ali's in it, and like, he's a very talented actor.
Totally.
So yeah. Yep. So I think that'll do it, right?
That'll do it. Put a bow on her.
Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, and you can get access to our special RSS feed that has us talking just kind of in a casual way. And, anything else we need to talk about?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Next time on the podcast, I'm going to try to do a Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse review with Mike. We'll see if that pans out. If not, then Roma. We'll have to review Roma.
Cool.
Yep. And so anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. I snore very loudly. And it's like immediate. Like, Tiny, you and I work together. We work nights. You know this all too well.
I'm familiar.
Me. Yes. So, I was sitting there and like, I was like, if I didn't have like a snoring problem, I would really embrace the nap. I would take the nap over this movie.
Oh man.
The Obsessive Viewer podcast is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to ObsessiveViewer.com/OV archive. You can also like our Facebook page and join the OV Facebook group at Facebook.com/TheObsessiveViewer. And follow us on Twitter at ObsessiveViewer and at ObsessiveTiny. And follow our recurring co-hosts at I am Mike White, that's me, at R.A. Feckus, and at Burger_Lurker. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com, T-E-E, public.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberInIrvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and on Twitter at OVAnthologyPod. You can also find Tower Junkies, a podcast where Matt and Tiny share their love of all things Stephen King and his magnum opus, The Dark Tower series, at towerjunkiespod.com and at towerjunkiespod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. The theme music for The Obsessive Viewer comes courtesy of the band Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Kitty!